Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another edition of RecruitMilitary Live, a continuing series of live broadcasts covering all things military transition, veteran employment, mil-spouse employment, and much, much more. My name is Lucas Connolly, retired U.S. Army officer and former TAP program manager, here to share with you the ins and outs of navigating the turbulent waters of civilian employment. If you're in search of meaningful employment, well, you're in the right place. Please go to rmvets.com/live to learn more. All right, let's roll right into today's show. Have you been told that cover letters are ancient history, that you don't need to write them, you don't need to submit them because nobody reads them? We've got a different story to tell today. Today's topic is truth, lies, and cover letters. Everything you need to know about cover letters that you probably won't hear anywhere else. Our very special guest today has 10 plus years in the federal government, serving as a Department of State Foreign Service officer in such exotic locations as Belarus, the Czech Republic, and St. Petersburg, Russia. He holds degrees in political science and Russian and Eastern European studies from Amherst College and the University of Oxford, respectively. For the last 13 plus years, he's been plying his trade as a full-time certified federal resume writer, where he spends a great deal of time, so he's told me, with transitioning and retiring service members who are starting their next careers. He is also a certified subject matter expert, an absolute genius when it comes to civilian resumes, LinkedIn profiles, SES applications, personal narratives, cover letters, and much, much more that help to get his clients referred, interviewed, and hired into the dream job that they've been pursuing. Please join me in welcoming the boss-level genius himself, Mr. Lex Levin.
Thank you so much, Lucas. Wow, that is going to be hard to live up to. Okay, I in fact do not call myself a genius in any platform, but thank you so much.
Anybody who's got a degree from Oxford is doing a lot better than my diploma from Salem State College. So welcome, sir.
Thank you so much. I'm thrilled to be here, and thank you for the opportunity.
All right, great. And so all you folks that are out there in internet land, now that you know who we are, let's hear who you are. Hit us up in that chat window. Let us know where you're watching from, who you're with, who you've served with, what your status is. Are you approaching separation, preparing for transition, getting ready to retire, heading for the National Guard or Reserves, or some other status I haven't heard of? Hit us up and let us know who you are. And as always, if you have questions, comments, or concerns, or just plain gripes, hit us up in the chat, and time allowing, we will address them. All right. Lex, a good friend of mine proposed this topic, and I almost didn't want to touch it because everybody's been telling me cover letters are a thing of the past. Nobody writes them. Nobody reads them. Don't bother. As I'm doing my research for this topic, I'm starting to find out that may not necessarily be the case. Are people lying to me?
They are. I really disagree with that perspective. I think properly done, a cover letter is a good arrow in your quiver and should absolutely be used as a tool. It's just another way, and a really good way, of telling the hiring folks why they should hire you. What are your top qualifications? Why you are the best person to pick for the job. The problem with the cover letters is that many people don't write them correctly or don't write them well, so they get ignored. And I think that's where some of the cover letters' current poor reputation comes from. Also, there's a tremendous amount of variation in how employers view cover letters. Some pay attention to them, some don't. For some, it's, on a case-by-case basis. But properly done, a good cover letter will definitely add value to your application. I strongly believe that.
Now, is this the case for both civilian and federal jobs?
This is more true for civilian jobs, for private sector jobs. Many federal job announcements actually ignore cover letters. They don't even mention them. Sometimes they will say cover letter is welcome but optional. Every now and then you'll see a federal job announcement that will require a cover letter, but that is rare. So usually cover letters are not as critical for federal applications as they are in the private sector. But again, here's another chance for you to get in front of the federal hiring manager and say, hey, here are my top 5 or 10 points for why you should refer me and interview me. So unless this job announcement specifically says no cover letters, I would send in a cover letter. It's just another chance to promote yourself.
Okay, so the cover letter you've said can help to promote you as the best qualified candidate. That sounds pretty simple. What else can the candidate hope to accomplish by including a cover letter?
All right. Well, a good cover letter will do several things. It will answer the question, why should you hire me? Or why should we hire you, rather? It can also be very useful in explaining any special circumstances regarding you that should be addressed. And, there's a whole universe of those. But if there are some special circumstances that apply to you, cover letter is definitely a place to explain and mention that. It should explain to the employer where you are in the process, how available you are. Are you available now? Or are you going to be available in 3 months or in 6 months? Are there any special terms or conditions? Do you want to work all remote? Are you open to a hybrid regime? And you also want to emphasize, to express a little bit more, the really important things that you want the hiring manager to see. Are there special achievements, any kind of impressive metrics, any kind of formal recognition that you receive that is really relevant to the job you're applying to? The cover letter is a great place to list all that. So, and in the end of the cover letter, you really should add some personal language that explains why you have a connection to this job, that if at all possible, try to show that this isn't just a job for you. You see it as a mission. Maybe it's part of what you feel is a calling. If you can show that you have some personal connection, some personal investment in the job, that might help to lift you above other job seekers who are simply focusing on their technical skills and qualifications. Well, you have those too, but if you can also show that you bring a personal commitment to the position, that could be a very good thing for you.
One of the things I actually just had an exchange with someone on LinkedIn today where they were talking about the value of a cover letter for a milspouse and how that can help to kind of paint the picture of gaps in employment, constant moves, relocations. Would you agree that can help to provide context for
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Military spouses really have a tough road ahead of them. It's a tough hill to climb. You're moving all the time. You're leaving jobs. You're getting new jobs. There's maybe not a lot of continuity. It's not a steady career with, a steady upward trajectory. So you need to explain all that, and that's where the cover letter comes in. If you can explain that you're a military spouse, you're following your active duty spouse, but here's what I've done. Here are the opportunities I've seized. Here's the value I've added. Here's the education and the training I've completed, and here's the value I can bring to you. So yeah, I think a cover letter for military spouses is really, really important.
Okay. Well, you've sold me. All right. I'm a believer now. Now I want to sit down and I want to draft a cover letter. I mean, where do I begin? Are we talking about an old-fashioned paper copy that I stick in an envelope and send in the mail, email, attach it to an email? I mean, what's the best methodology?
Well, the cover letter doesn't exist in a vacuum. It's part of a larger application. It's part of a larger package. So typically, however you're going to submit your application package, which is your resume and anything else you may need to submit, that's how you'll submit the cover letter. If you're going to email your resume, you're going to email the cover letter. If you're going to mail in a hard copy, you're going to do that. If you're going to convert the documents to PDF and email them that way or upload to a portal online, then that's how you do it. So follow the instructions for the overall application. And, that's really good advice in general, Lucas. Whatever the application tells you to do, read the instructions, follow directions. Because if you can't even follow the initial application directions,
why would they hire you, right?
Right, exactly. So whatever they say, however they want you to apply, that's how you apply. And that might help determine the format, whether it's hard copy, email, PDF, upload, or, whatever else it might be.
Okay. Now, one of the things that when I have in the past, very briefly spoken with some candidates and clients and reference cover letters, one of the things I encourage them to do is I say, look, don't put on the top of the cover letter to whom it may concern. It makes it seem like you haven't done your research about who it is you're addressing, right? It shouldn't be too hard to find out who the director of HR is at that particular company. But then we look over on the federal side where the hiring decision maker is like the Wizard of Oz, like hidden in the behind the curtain somewhere, pulling levers. So, how do I, dear whoever you are, I mean, how do I address this?
Well, that's a good point. And I've seen that advice a lot. It is a little bit easier to find out the specific person in the private sector. These days, you could go to LinkedIn, look up the company, and see if you can find who the head of HR is. You can't really do that in the federal space. The federal HR really protects itself from applicants. They want to be behind a firewall. They don't want to be contacted. They don't want to be bothered. In my experience, it's very, very difficult to find out the actual name. So when I write cover letters, I just say, dear federal hiring official.
Okay.
I think that's okay. Obviously, if you can find out the person's name, that's great. But usually that is not going to be the case for most applicants. So just say, dear federal hiring official. That's fine.
Well, I suppose if they don't like it, it's their own fault, right? And find out who they are. How can we put their name on the document?
Exactly. Plus, unlike the private sector, your application may be reviewed by more than one person over in the federal side. So there could be several people involved. There probably will be several people involved. So, if you over personalize it, that might work against you as well. So dear federal hiring official should work just fine.
Okay. All right. I dig it. So you've sold me. All right. We should be doing cover letters. I see the value. What about content? As I sit down and get ready to draft this, what are some of the things? Are we talking 2-page, 1-page, short, long?
Right.
What should we open with? What should this letter contain?
Right. Good question. Okay. My philosophy is short and sweet. 1 page. You don't need to go on and on. If you go on to a second page, generally the cover letter starts to drag. And I've seen that over and over again. You want to express your strong interest in the job. Tell them you want to interview for this position. You feel very confident that you have the qualifications for it. Then list your qualifications. List some bullets, 5 bullets or however many that show your top qualifications for this position. Whatever the job requires, if it's experience, if it's education, if it's any kind of certs or training, list that. Tell them, this is what you want. Here's what I've got. And then after that, I usually do a paragraph where I just summarize my most relevant experience in narrative form, whether it's in my client's most current position or going back over a few jobs. And then I end with a strong statement in which I explain, again, my personal connection to this position, why I actually want to do this job, what's my emotional investment in this position. And with a very strong statement, I'm confident I will add real value to your team. I really would love to support your mission. If you're a veteran and you're applying to any kind of position that has to do with the military, I often see people say, I want to continue serving my military family, and this role, is a great opportunity for me to do that. So don't be afraid to mention that. If you're a vet applying to a veteran-facing position or a DoD position, it's absolutely fine to express that.
Well, we've got a question here from Greg Archibald. How do I do a 1-page cover letter with 30 years of experience?
By being very concise. You absolutely can summarize your career, even if it's a lifetime career of 30 years. You just need to identify the big themes. What have you specialized in? What sort of organizations have you served? What have been some of your biggest achievements and accomplishments? What formal recognition have you received? If you can say, I've spent 30 years as a progressively more senior leader in the U.S. Army, I've completed this training and that training. I've completed this degree. I've successfully deployed X number of times. I've received, the Bronze Star, Legion of Merit, several MSMs, all of that starts to put together a picture. Here is a very accomplished guy who has done a lot and he's ready to add that value to their next employer. So you've got to identify the big themes in your career and then put them down in bullets and then a narrative on one page. It's absolutely possible. I do it every day. It might take you, a couple tries to do it. And that's why it's generally a good idea to have people who know you well, review your resume and your cover letter. They will catch things that you've missed, and they may also remember things that you've forgotten or not emphasized. So definitely don't let your resume and cover letter go out without having someone who you know and trust read them over.
I think the trust thing is very important too, because you want to hand your material, whether it's a resume, a cover letter, or any other written document. You want to hand it to someone not only who you trust and who's credible and has at least some level of education, but someone who's willing to tell you that it's messed up.
Right.
It's no good for somebody to say, "Oh, it's great. Send it. I love it. It's perfect."
Now, if somebody gives you their resume and cover letter to read, treat that with respect. Give it a little time. Don't just skim it. Sit down, read it over, and think about it, because this is important. These are important documents. And by the way, let me also say, absolutely do not let your cover letter and resume go out with any kind of grammar errors, spelling error, punctuation errors. That stuff is like nails on a chalkboard. That scene where the record skips and everyone goes, "Oh, well, that's as a writer, that's how I feel when I see a mistake in a formal document." There are any number of tools available. I use Grammarly. It's a free online checker that's very good at picking up, common mistakes. So proofread your stuff and then proofread it again. Do not let it go out with mistakes.
I can't concur on that enough. I had an experience when I was doing some hiring, and I had a resume from a candidate, and the resume was just stellar. It was absolutely beautifully written. It was tailored. It hit all the fine points. And then I read the cover letter, and the cover letter was very poor. It was exceptionally poor. Right. And it stood in stark contrast to the resume, which made me kind of believe that the resume was written by someone other than the person that wrote the cover letter.
Could be.
Perhaps they wrote that $500 check for a great resume, and then as an afterthought whipped together a cover letter. And
right.
Let's just say that person was not further considered for the role.
Yeah, well, as a friend of mine,
do it right.
Yeah, exactly. Like my friend used to say, spend the extra dime and get enough, right? So,
right.
He was talking about sodas and fast food places, but I think the same principle applies. Yeah. As far as the format, I think you were still asking about that. A lot of people these days like to write their cover letter, then print it, sign it, and then scan and upload the signed copy as a PDF. That's a nice, classy move. But
with the handwritten signature.
Yeah, but it's not necessary. I've seen plenty of cover letters that were not signed in person. But if you want to class it up, then I would suggest doing that.
So you don't have to spend an extra money on that 120-pound, off-white old English paper. And now we're talking back in the day whenever all your resumes, right? You had to go buy resume paper, and it was expensive.
Yeah. Yep, I remember. Now, fortunately, those days are gone.
Well, all right, awesome. Now, one thing that I had someone mention to me was, if you were referred or had some kind of previous interaction with the company, to lead with that. Of, hey, I recently met, Lex Levin at your job fair, and he referred me to this opportunity,
right?
As a way of kind of leading in to that cover letter. Does that sound appropriate?
Absolutely. If one of the things people ask is, do you want to tell them how you heard about the role? I would say that's optional. That usually doesn't add a lot of value. I mean, I saw this job online. I mean, how much value does saying that add? Not at all, unless you were referred to this position by someone in particular, a specific individual who may be in the company or may be connected to the employer. Then you absolutely want to start with that, because that's a powerful argument that this person's already, done some work and
they're exercising some initiative, right?
What's that?
They're exercising some initiative.
Yes, they're exercising initiative, and someone else has already done at least a little bit of vetting of the candidate and suggested, that they might be a good fit. So yeah, that's a strong thing to start with if it applies. Otherwise, I just don't think it adds that value to say, oh, I saw it on this and this website. Well, so did everyone else.
Hey, just for a second to go back to Greg's question, and Greg, thanks for the question. It really is relevant. One of the things that somebody explained to me was, listen, the hiring manager needs to fill this position. They want to fill it soon, and they want to fill it with the right candidate. And ultimately, they don't need to hear your life story. What they need to hear is enough information to answer 3 key questions. And the folks that I work with have heard this a million times from me, the 3 key questions. Can you do the job? Can you generate tangible results quickly? And can you fit into my workplace culture? Does that sound about right?
Yeah, absolutely. Ultimately, when you're applying for a position, you're not just saying, hey, I have the skills you need for me to succeed in this position. You're also kind of applying to the tribe. You're applying to the specific subculture, which is that workplace. And it has to be a good fit. We all know stories of people who maybe were technically skilled, but they weren't a good fit for the culture, whether people skills or something else. So you definitely want to demonstrate that you are a good culture fit for the position. And definitely knowing the specialized language of the industry that you're applying to is a good way to show that. Talking about similar positions in similar areas you worked before is a good way of showing that you have relevant experience. But yeah, culture fit is important. It's a little bit less important in the federal sphere because the feds are so focused on experience and you being plug and play. But it certainly doesn't hurt to show that, hey, I'm already federal civilian employee, or I'm a federal contractor and I've been one for more than 5 years or 10 years. And I know, how things work in the federal environment. Those are all good things to stress in the cover letter.
Hey, here's a great question. Oh, where did I put it? Let's see. Okay, what's Corey got? Corey, love the 3-paragraph cover letter plan. Not all experience is relevant. Hiring managers, especially for federal jobs, have a ton to read before selecting people to interview. Sound about right to you, Lex?
I'm just sorry. My middle-aged eyes are catching up to this tiny font.
That's all right. Corey says, love the 3-paragraph cover letter format. Not all experience is relevant. Hiring managers, especially for federal, have a ton to read.
Yes. One very common mistake I see is that people throw the kitchen sink into their resume and into their cover letter. Don't do that. Only include the information that's relevant to the job you're trying to get. So if you have some work-related experience that's not that relevant, and especially if it's older experience, leave it out. You don't need to tie them up with that. There's also a message in the chat about federal resumes showing salary.
Yes.
That usually is mandatory. That's right. You will typically see language in federal job announcements that they want to see not only your job title and where you work, they want to see your salary, they want to see the name of your supervisor and their phone number and whether or not they can be contacted. So the feds, they're nosy. They ask for a lot more information than private sector folks do. So yeah, typically you do put your salary history on the resume, and it also helps federal HR to see that you're applying at the right grade,
right.
At the right level. Because if your salary history taps out at 16, here you are applying for a GS-15 position, and at 150, that's going to raise some eyebrows. So if they ask for it, then do it. That's sort of rule number 1. Read the job announcement and give them what they're asking for.
Great. Another question. Lots of great questions today. Thanks, Sharon Dabney, retired Army Master Sergeant. Should I leave what I know, have researched about the company within the cover letter, or communicate this with questions during the interview? Great question.
Good question. I would leave it for the interview. The cover letter is what can I do for you? The interview is the better venue for expressing, here's what I know about you. Here's why I want to work for you. So, you might want to mention it towards the end of the cover letter if there's a strong connection to your personal mission. Your company has been doing X and I'm really committed to X, and that's why I would love to work for you. But you want to expand on that in the interview when they ask you for questions.
Yeah, I agree. Like you said, keep it concise, keep it short. Raimundo Estevez, transitioning service member working with us here at Recruit Military, has a question. Should we focus on experiences versus skills in our cover letter?
Well, it's not an either or. Focus on both. Definitely want to talk about your most relevant experience, but that's a great way to also talk about what skills you learned and what skills you use in those experiences, right?
No,
to me, it's not a one or the other, it's both.
I would agree. I think, when I compare the cover letter to a standardized list of questions, and Ray, thanks for your question. When I compare the cover letter in the process to kind of a standardized list of questions that folks are trying to answer, I think the content of the cover letter, at least my impression, most closely aligns with the question, why should I hire you?
Right.
All right.
Right.
Okay. As we wind this down, let's talk about things not to do. Lex, what are you seeing in really bad cover letters? I'm sure you've seen some horrible ones. I'm sure you've seen some good ones. What are the don't do's?
Okay. Again, I got to say it, mistakes, stupid grammar mistakes, misuse of punctuation, failure to follow basic rules of English. 1, 2, and I see this a lot also, overly formal language.
Mm-hmm.
Don't write like you're speaking to the King of England. I mean, obviously this is formal business writing, but don't over formalize it. Don't because it sounds fake. It sounds artificial. It sounds like you're trying to sound like in a way that's not like your common way of communicating. So be direct, be professional, but don't be overly formal, overly fancy in your language. I see that also. It's just a turnoff.
Quick note from Gary, and this will be the last question. Gary, thanks for your question. It sounds like the cover letter is similar to a 30-second elevator pitch. Am I right on track with this? I've heard so many things about doing a cover letter, and I'm thankful for the great information. Gary, great question. Thank you.
Yeah, an elevator pitch would be a terrific start for a cover letter. If you can translate your elevator pitch into one-page cover letter, I think that's good. Absolutely. Again, everything has to work towards answering the question, why should we hire you? So the elevator pitch goes into a lot of that. So definitely use that, turn that pitch into a one-page cover letter, and it'll work.
All right. Well, fantastic. I think myself personally, I've learned a lot about cover letters, folks. Okay. So keep it concise, keep it down to one page. Tell the employer whether or not you were referred. Let them know why they should hire you, why you're the right solution to the problem that they're having. Let them know some of your accomplishments. Don't get the PhD level language like you're talking to Congress. Sell yourself. Try to keep it personal. Lex, there's 100 different things that I've taken out of this. I could probably write a whole magazine article. Thank you so much for being with us on the show today.
Of course. Thank you so much. And remember, spell check that thing.
Absolutely. Hey, if it's underlined with a little squiggle, check your spelling.
Lucas, this was great. Thank you so much.
Lex, if the folks at home want to find you, talk to you more, learn more from what you've got to share, where can they find you?
They can find me on LinkedIn, and I also have a website, lexlevinllc.com. I'm happy to hear from you. Come on in.
All right. Once again, Lex, thanks for being here. And folks, for those of you who haven't already done so, do yourself a solid and register at www.recruitmilitary.com for access to over 16,000 employers with 400,000 job opportunities around the world or around the corner. That about wraps it up for us today. Tune in June 7th when Recruit Military Live will feature host Gabby Pettigrew and an extra special guest, Talent War co-author George Randall. They'll be talking about how to take your performance at a job interview job interview to the whole nother level. Take it from good to great and land that job. Get that job offer. Don't miss it. That's June 7th. Till then, this has been Lucas Connolly for Recruit Military. Till we see you next time, good luck and Godspeed.
Ciao.